Hi third graders! We're back for another awesome week of learning about fractions, and I'm super excited that I get to come back and learn with you this week. So let's get right to it. I'm going to shift my screen so that you can see the work I'm doing, not my face, because I don't think you need to see my face. Okay, so we are learning about fractions on a number line this week. And so far, before watching this video, you should have watched 3 different Khan Academy videos talking about fractions on a number line. I am going to do a quick review of some of the things that were in there, and then I'm going to move on to some new topics. So when we're talking about fractions on a number line, we're looking at another way we can represent a fraction or a part of a whole, and that is using the number line. So I need you to take notes. So if you need to pause this video now and go get a sheet of notebook paper and pencil, that would be great. Or you need to pause and open up a Google Doc so that you can take notes side by side. I would recommend paper and pencil because you're going to be doing some drawing, which will be difficult in a Google Doc. So pause the video and get what you need now. Okay. So when we're talking about fractions on a number line, really what we're doing is we're talking about how we can represent our fractions in a different way. So far in this unit, we have talked about how, if I have a shape and it's broken or partitioned into, let's say, 4 equal parts, each one of those represents 1 out of 4. And altogether, that equals 1 whole, or 4/4. So if we imagined that this was a candy bar, for example, and I was really very hungry, and I started to eat my candy bar and I ate this much, I would have eaten 1/4. But then I was like, you know what, I'm not done yet, so I want to eat some more. Now I have eaten 2 of them, or 2/4. And if I'm still hungry or I still have a sweet tooth and I want some more, and I eat another whole slice, I've now eaten 3 out of the 4 pieces of chocolate or candy or whatever this is. And if that's still not enough, or I look at it and go, well, there's only 1 piece left, and I choose to eat that, that's going to be 4 out of 4, or the whole candy bar, 1 whole candy bar. So we talked about that a bit last week and the week before. We can look at that same, we can look at that same theory or that same way of representing fractions, but on a number line. I tend to always think about my fractions as candy or cake or cookies or something like that because there's nothing I love to do math with more than food. So if I think about my number line and let's say I have 0 to 1, that represents that 1 whole candy bar. Now, if I told you that I need to eat 1/4 of the candy bar, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to partition that candy bar into 4 equal parts. Because if I'm going to eat 1/4, I've got to eat 1 out of 4 equal parts. So I'm going to cut this into 4 equal parts the best I can. And you may notice that I drew 3 lines so that I have 4 parts. Keep that in mind later, because when you're partitioning, it's often very common to accidentally draw the same number of lines as you have your denominator, when in fact you actually need 1 less. So if my denominator is 4, if I need 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, I actually only drew 1, 2, 3 lines. So I've got my 4 parts and I eat 1 part of my candy bar. That represents 1/4. So if I was going to put a point on this line that represents 1/4, it would be right here. That point represents 1/4. If I ate more, it would be 2/4. And if I ate 1 more piece of that candy bar, it would be 3/4. And if I ate the entire thing, it would be 4/4. You can see how this representation and this representation are almost identical when I take that space between 0 and 1 and turn it into the candy bar or make it into a rectangle by connecting it horizontally. So very quickly, let's remember the steps I took. First, I partitioned, that is not how you spell partition, Mrs. Shock. Partitioned the space between the whole numbers. I hope you're writing this. Into blank equal parts. And that was based off of the denominator. Then I labeled each tick mark or dash or slash or however you want to call it on the number line as its fraction. Let's look at it another way. I hope you wrote that all down. If you didn't, you should pause and do it now. Let's say I have my number line, and it's going to go between 0 and 1 again. And I want to represent the number, or the fraction, let's say 3/6. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this space that's between the whole numbers. I can connect them if I want, but I don't have to. And I'm going to break it into 6 equal parts. And I'm going to label them. So this is 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, and then whatever the whole, the 1 is, that should be 6/6. These are equal. Okay? I could, if I wanted, call this 0/6. So now I need to find 3/6 on my number line. Here it is. So step 1, I partitioned. I did it again. Then I labeled. Then I plotted. Okay. So now let's think about, what about fractions that are greater than 1? Because you know that number line we learned when we were younger keeps going forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So let's say this is 0, this is 1, this is 2. And I want to label this fraction, this number line, in fractions that are, let's do thirds. So I'm going to cut each of my wholes, so this is one whole, I'm going to cut that into thirds. This is a different whole. Think about it like 2 different candy bars or 2 different cakes. If I were labeling this number line, this of course would be 0/3. This would be 1/3, 2/3. Remember, we talked about how the whole should be the same, 3/3. What if I added another third? What would 3/3 and another third be? Well, that would be 4/3. If I added another third, that would be 5/3. And if I added another third, that would be 6/3. If we look here, 6 divided by 3 equals 2, just so you know. So if I wanted to say find 4/3 on this number line, that would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3. So I can find fractions that are greater than 1 as well. So let's find the fraction 5/2. So I'm going to draw my number line. I'm going to label this 0, 1, 2. I'm going to go up to 3. So first thing is I've got to partition each part of the number line into halves. So one line makes halves. And now I'm going to count. So if this is 0 halves, if I keep eating on this number line, chomp, 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 I've eaten 1/2 of my candy bar. If I keep going, chomp, 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 I've eaten 2 halves or 1 whole candy bar. If I keep going, chomp, 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 I've got 3 halves. If I keep going, chomp, 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 I've got 4 halves or 2 whole candy bars. I'm almost there. Chomp, 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 chomp. 5 halves. And if I keep going just to finish it out, this would be 6 halves. Because 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So those ones are my whole numbers. So if I need to find 5 halves, that's 1/2, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves is right here. Okay, so before I let you go, I want to show you a misconception that I see a lot that I want to catch you before you start making. Here's what a lot of kids mistakenly, and honestly a lot of adults too, mistakenly will do. Let's say they're 0, 1, 2, and their number line is cut into, we'll call it fourths. Okay, and they start labeling, but the first thing that they do is they go, okay, this has 1, that's confusing. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal parts. So if I have this point right here, I would say that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths. That's wrong. Because remember, what we are doing is we're partitioning. This is not correct. What we're doing is we're partitioning the space that's between the whole numbers. So if I have the whole number 0 and the whole number 1, this is one whole. That is what I am breaking into fourths. So my denominator has to be 4. Now I can add on and go up to 2 and break that into fourths, but that's like having a whole separate candy bar. This is a common mistake, is that kids will look and they'll say, okay, there's 8 equal parts, my denominator must be 8. You need to know how many equal parts are in one whole, not in all of your number line. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with one to practice. I'm going to give you a number line. You're going to draw it down onto your paper. I'm going to make it pretty easy, I think. I'm going to break each whole into thirds. I want you to find and label for me 2/3 and also 5/3. So you're going to pause right now and do that, and then at the very, very end of the video, you can, or after you're done, you can unpause, and the very end of the video will show you where they are. So you're pausing now. Okay, so now you're going to check your work, and these should be your answers. You should have 2 different sections in your number line, one that represents one whole and one that represents the other whole. And you should have the second tally here marked as your 2/3, and then the second tally in that one marked as your 5/3. All right, off you go to do the rest of your work for today. I will see you in your Zoom on Friday if I don't see you in a small group before that. Have a great week, enjoy the sunshine, and also get your work done. Bye.